Hello everyone, welcome to the new lecture on graphical user interface programming in Python. We have already posted few lecture on graphical user interface in Python. In the previous lectures on GUI, we have already discussed how to create the window, how to sustain the window, how to change the various of the properties of windows, and apart from that we have also discussed two of the component, label and button. Now in this lecture we are going to discuss the third component, which is known as entry component in GUI. Now entry component is basically a text field to enter or to collect a single line input from the user. Generally we have came across text field in various example, like if we are filling a form on internet for any purpose, maybe you are signing up for an email account. In that case also you do generally fill a online form where we have to enter our name and various other information. So we do have those text field present on those forms, and these text fields are basically meant to enter a single, like they are something like this, and a cursor is blinking. Whenever we type the text is entered in these text field, and they are meant to enter a single line. We cannot enter multiple line here. For entering multiple line, we do have other component. In GUI programming in Python, we do have text component to enter multiple line. We will be discussing the text component in the next lecture. In this lecture we are discussing the entry component. So entry component is a component which is used to collect a single line entry from the user. Now how do we create that entry component in GUI and how to use the entry component? In this example we are going to discuss all this, but before that let's create a file to check the entry component. So right click on the project and select a Python file. We'll name it as entry because we are going to discuss the entry component, and as usual we have to import certain modules, say from tk, not tk, it's let's import the tkinter first. Import tkinter as tk. We have taken the alias for will be added, so I will be using tk.tk function as usual. This will create the window, but to sustain the window we all know that we have to execute the main loop, because without the main loop the window won't sustain. And if you want to have certain minimum size for the window, you can use window.geometry or window.minimum size. All these things have been already discussed. Okay, so if you haven't checked the first few videos, please go and check, it's already posted. So let's using tk function of the toolkit module, then we have given certain dimension to the window 500 by 500, and we have executed the main loop to sustain the window on the screen. Now before doing anything, let's run the program and check. Let's run the program. Now entry, if you run the program, this window, this is the window which will appear. On this window we are going to add some component like entry component and check how to use the entry component. Let's change the title also. As we have discussed in the previous, this default title is there named as tk. We can have our custom title to the window. So let's first change this title into some. We are going to create the entry component, say my text field. I will name it as my text field, and tk module do have the entry function. So we will use the entry function. Although we can have multiple things in this entry component, we can have multiple argument to this, but first let's simply add this to my window and check how does it look when we add this component to the window. So pack it and let's run the program again. Let's check. So this is the, you can check, this is the entry component that is visible on the screen. If you want, let's run it once more. If you check, the default width of this text field is something like this. This is the width. If you want to change the width of the entry field, Please remember the width of the entry field doesn't determine how many characters can be entered in the entry field. You can enter any number of characters, but if you want the number of character to be visible on the screen at a time, you can change the width property of the entry field. So how can we change the width of the entry field? For that, we can pass an argument which is known as width. Here you can say 25 character at a time can be visible. So if I run the program again, now you can check the width is 25. If you want to check once more, let's increase it to 40 and run it again. Now you can check the width of the change is visible now. You can check this is the width now. So this is the visible number of characters. Visible number of character doesn't mean this is the maximum limit. We can enter more than this, but this is how many characters will be visible at a time in the text component. So using the width attribute, we can decide how many characters will be visible. Also, and a label component also to check how can we enter the value into the text component and how can we extract that value from the text component or entry component. So what are we going to do is we are going to create a label into my window, and let's pack this label onto my window, and after this text or entry field we are going to create a button. So I will name it as my button. Okay, and we will also pack this my button onto my window, and now we are going to check the window. So these are the three component. My label is on the top, then is the text field, and then is my button. Now if you check, when I run the program, the cursor is not blinking on the text field or entry field. When we click on the entry field, then only the cursor is blinking on the entry field. So if you want to already have the cursor into the text field whenever you run the program or execute the program, you can use my text field dot focus. What does this focus do? Focus will keep the focus on the entry field when we run the program. Although this focus function can be used with any of the component. For time being, we want that when the program run, the focus should always be on the text field or entry field. Now you can check when I am running the program, the cursor is already blinking. And if I comment the cursor is not blinking in the text field or entry field. So to bring the focus onto any of the component, you can use the focus function on that component. So now we are ready with the layout that we do have a label and we do have a text field, then we do have a button. Now what we are going to do, we will try to enter a text in the entry field, and now when we click on this button, I want to extract that text and display on the label of the window, that is my label. So for that, we already know that in order to add certain functionality to the button, we use the command attribute, and in this I have to name any function. Say we will display as the function. Already we have, although we haven't defined the function, so I will define the function as display, and in this function what we'll do, when the button will be clicked, the value of the entry field, that is my text field, has to be displayed in the label. So what we will do is we will extract the value of the text field. Val is equal to my text field dot get. Please remember, to extract the content of the entry field, there is a function known as get. So what this statement will do, this get function will take out the value whatever you have entered in the text field named as my text field, and will assign that to the variable named as val. Now what we are going to do, we are going to assign this value on this variable val onto my label named as my label. So we already have discussed that in order to change any of the property of any component, we use the customize function. So we do have my label dot config, sorry, not customize, it should be config. So config, and in the bracket I will into the text property of the label. To display anything on the label, the property is text. So I will assign this variable to the text property of the label. So when I'll click on this button, the text or whatever the value has been entered in the text field will be extracted and will be assigned onto this variable val, and then that value will be assigned as the text attribute of my label. Text attribute basically decide what text has to be displayed on my label. If you have any confusion in all this, please go and check the previous lecture on the graphical user interface. So now if I run the program, now please check, I am entering, say Rahul Singh is the name, and if I click on this button, please check, the value whatever you have entered on this text field is extracted and assigned to the label on the top. Now if I change this, my address is India, and if I click on this, now this text is extracted and displayed on the label field. Now one more thing can be done. When we are defining the entry component, we can assign a variable to this entry component, and whenever you have to use the value of the entry field, you can directly use that variable. So how to assign the variable to this entry field? To assign the variable, there is a component known as text variable property, and to this text variable property you can assign any variable, say entry underscore var. Although we do need to create this variable, this you can check, there is a red underline under this variable because we haven't defined any such variable. So what we'll do is, with this name I will define a variable, entry underscore variable, and to define the variable, the TK component have various type of variables. Int variable, int var, double var, string var. In this case we are going to create the string variable, so I will call string var, okay, and this will create the variable. Now whenever we are clicking on this button, the display function is called. Earlier what we used to do is, we used to extract the value directly from the text field. Now as we have assigned a text variable named as entry var to this text field or entry field, now I can directly access the value of the entry field through this variable. So instead of extracting the value from the text field directly, what I will do is, now I will directly assign the value of this variable entry var, entry underscore var dot get. Now instead of extracting the value from the text field, I am extracting the same value of the entry field through this variable which I have assigned to the entry field. Now run the program again to check whether it's working or not. Now let's say this is what can I say, my entry field. Now if I click on this button, you can check the same work which earlier we were doing through. Earlier what we are doing, we are extracting the value from the text field, then we are assigning that value. Now what we have done, we have assigned a variable to the entry field. And how to declare the variable? Entry var is the name of the variable. TK module do have various kind of variables, say string var, int var, double var and boolean var. So we have done this, we have assigned a variable, and now instead of directly taking the value from the entry field, we are taking the value from the variable which is connected with the entry field. So this variable is going to contain the value whatever is assigned to the entry field. So this is the same thing, either extract the value from the entry field or from the variable is the same. That's why when we are extracting, let's change the value to check. This entry field is using a variable. Now if I click the button again, you can check that the value on the label is the same value which we entered in the entry field. Now we can do one more thing. If you check, if you run the program, nothing is displayed on the entry field. If you want a default value onto the entry field when it is displayed, you can assign some value to this variable, because this variable is binded or connected with the entry field. So if I assign certain value to this variable, that value will be displayed on the entry field. So if I assign certain value to this entry field, name of the entry variable is, the name of the variable connected with the entry field is entry var. So if I assign certain value to this, say I will assign entry value, a default value to the entry field, and now if I run this program, this default value will be displayed. You can even display certain value which is telling the purpose of the entry field. Say if I have created this entry field to assign the name to the user, I can display a text something like this, entry name or entry your name, so that this will give the information to the user who is using my window. So entry your name, enter your name will be better. Enter your name will be displayed by default on the entry field when the entry field will be displayed. Let's run the program again. Now you can check, by default enter your name is getting displayed. So you can change this, say we have John Doe as the name, and when we click, this value will be displayed. But when you are not displaying anything, when you are running the program, by default the value which you have assigned to this variable, where is the variable? This is the variable. The default value of this variable will be assigned to the entry field when it will be displayed. So whenever you assign a variable to a entry field, that variable is connected with the entry field. Whatever you entered to this variable will be displayed on the entry field, whereas if you change that value, whatever value assigned, new value assigned to the entry field will be assigned to this variable. Both has been demonstrated when we entered certain value or default value to this variable, and when we run the program, that default value is getting displayed in the entry field, and when we change that value, we have seen through function, so through this display function, that value can be extracted through the variable also and can be used in any purpose. Like in this case, we are assigning that text value to my label as its text property. So in this example, what we have done till now, we have used the entry field and we have checked what are the various properties of the entry field, how to put the focus on the entry field, and we have also checked how to assign or bind a variable with the entry field and how to use that variable. Now what we'll talk about, if you run the program again, you find that in order to close this window every time, what we need to do is we need to click on this cross button on the top of the window. There is no other way to exit this window. What if we want that instead of clicking on this, or along with this, we must have one more option, that is there must be a button on this text on this window, so that if we want to exit this window, we can click on that button. So how can we do that? So what I'll create, my exit window, and then I have to create a button on this. And please remember, for exiting the window, there is a predefined function known as window.destroy. The name of my window is window. So in order to exit this window, we can use window.destroy function. With this, we don't have to separately define a function to add a command to this exit button. Only we have to, in the command, we can call a predefined function known as window.destroy. So what I am going to do is tk dot I will name it as exit only, that is fine. Exit is equal to tk dot button. Okay, now what I am going to do is I will name certain text onto this, say exit window, and in this I will add the command. As I have said, the command will be, as I have said, there is a predefined function known as window.destroy. So using this predefined function, we can destroy or exit the window. So what we have done, we have defined an exit function, and in this exit function the text will be displayed is exit window, and the command which we have assigned to this is window.destroy. This window.destroy is a predefined command which is used to close the window. Now one more thing we have to do is to pack this with the window. So after this, let's run the program. Now you can check, we have this label, we have this entry, we have this button, and we have this exit. What we have to do is, in order to exit, instead of this close button, but before checking this, my button, certain values, certain proper name has not been assigned. So my button, instead of my button, I will use it as display. So I will use display as the value, and now run the program again. Now display button is there, which is used to display the value of the entry field onto the label. Now to exit the button, instead of clicking on this cross button, I can click on this exit button. Now you can check, this is, now in order to exit the window, we have used the exit button. Now if you run the program again, what we want to now check is, if you can check, there is no space in between the component. Just after the label is the text field, just after the text field is the button, and after the first button continuously we are having the last button. There is no space in between. They are closely packed to each other without any space. So how can we put certain space in between the component? Although later we will discussing that by default all these components are getting displayed vertically. How can we arrange them properly that this entry field should come by the side of this instead of below the label? How can we bring this text field on the side of this particular label, and how can we put these two buttons parallel to each other, and how to add space in between the component? But here we only want to check how to put the space in between the component, because we can check that all the components are getting displayed vertically, very close to each other, tightly packed. There is no space in between. So what you can do is, when you pack the component to our window, say here, we can add certain space by using pad y. Actually pad y means padding or spacing vertically. Y means, what do you mean by y? Y means, okay, we have entered this pad y incompletely. So first remove this and run this program again. The vertical, I have already told that vertical direction means this, vertical y axis of a graph, and this is the x, that is horizontal. Okay, so whenever I talk about vertical means y, we are talking about this space, the vertical space in between, and when we talk about horizontal space, we are talking about this, the vertical space. So what we are going to do, we are going to add certain space vertically, so they are not so closely binded together. There should be some space in between, so the clarity is also seen. So what we can do is, whenever we are packing any component, so pad y is the vertical space which can be inserted between two components. Say let be 20 pad y. So after label there will be a space of 20, and similarly after the text field also, in the pack, after text field also you need to have a pack y of 20, that is a space, vertical space of 20, and similarly in this button also pad y of 20. We don't have to give any space to this exit because this is the last component. So if I run the program again, you can check now the components are having beautifully displayed with some space in between. So after my label there is a space, after the entry field there is a space, and similarly after the display button also there is some space in between the two buttons. So in order to put certain space, we can use the pad y. So in this lecture we have discussed the entry component, we have discussed the variables, text variable that can be binded with the entry field. Then we have also discussed how to close the window without using cross button by defining a button and assigning it with the command of window.destroy. We have also discussed how to put some vertical space between the component using pad y. So that's all for this video. So that's all for this video. In the next video, we will be discussing some other components such as text component, which is used for entering multiple line. In this example, we have checked the entry component, which is used to enter single line. We cannot enter multiple line in the entry component. So in the next video or lecture, we will be discussing the text component of the GUI programming in Python. So thank you very much for watching this video. Please give your valuable feedback in the comment section after watching the video. Thank you.